In Kurt Richter's first set of drowning rat experiments, the first rats swam around the surface for a while before navigating what was below. They were only alive for 2 minutes before drowning. The domesticated rats, on the other hand, took an entirely different approach. Following an initial exploration, most of their time was spent on the surface. They simply continued swimming. They were able to endure for days before dying of fatigue and drowning. Kurt conducted his second series of research on wild rats. Wild rats are great swimmers, and these ferocious and aggressive ones had only been trapped recently. Kurt clearly expected them to fight for their lives. Surprisingly, though, this was not the case. None of the wild rats lasted longer than a few minutes, despite their swimming skills. Kurt considered what drove some of the rats to give up, and came to the conclusion that hope was a major component in their resolve to persevere. Where rats have been assisted in the past and feel they may be salvaged, they will continue to battle in the belief that all is not lost. When they don't have this past experience, though, they will rapidly give up. With this in mind, Kurt decided to continue his experiments. The last set of tests focused on the effect of providing hope on the rats' endurance underwater. Kurt chose a fresh group of rats in order to test his idea. This time, though, he took note of when they gave up and saved them right before they drowned. He then refilled the water and began the trials all over again, and it turned out that his theory was correct. The rats swam for a substantially longer period of time than when they were originally placed in the water. The only difference was that they'd been saved previously, so this time there was hope. Kurt concluded that after the elimination of hopelessness, the rats do not die. This is only one of the countless rat tests that are conducted on a daily basis. Most of the time, we hear that rats are being used in place of humans in these kinds of studies aimed at improving human health. But why are rats being used to try to discover a solution for something that is human? According to the Foundation for Biomedical Research, researchers examine rats and mice because they are genetically quite similar to humans. I'll argue in this video essay that such trials are not just confined to the medical field. Throughout the years, artists have also utilized rats to exemplify their work. By exploring a diverse range of artworks, I aim to illustrate how these unconventional collaborations blur the lines between scientific experimentation and artistic expression, both using rats as a medium to convey their ideas and theories. In 1972, a visual novelist named Art Spiegelman was commissioned to draw an animal-themed comic book. While trying to come up with an engaging narrative, he revisited his childhood nightmares where the Nazis hunted the Jews. In his research for the novel, he discovered how Jews were represented literally as rats. Posters of killing the vermin and making them flee were part of the Nazi propaganda. In Spiegelman's enduring Holocaust epic, Maus, he recounts the horrors faced by his father in a Nazi concentration camp. Maus is among the most widely discussed publications in recent decades. The novel has often been chastised for not treating the subject with enough compassion. Spiegelman depicts Jews as mice and Germans as cats, prompting the issue of why he chose to depict the people as animals rather than humans. The species are not picked at random and have a definite significance. Mice, which are linked with frailty, burrowing, and even vermin, represent the Jews. The Nazi ideology characterized Jews as embodying evil and being the polar opposite of the Aryans, which led to the identification of Jews with vermin. As a result, depicting the Germans as cats, natural foes of mice, appears to be a no-brainer. However, Maus is only one of many works of art that use rats as symbols. In the Old Testament, rats are described as dirty and unfit for handling or eating. A gang of rats, on the other hand, was a symbol of joy and success in ancient Greece and Rome. Let's look at a couple more instances to gain a better perspective. Rat Film is a feature-length documentary that explores the history of Baltimore through the lens of the rat, as well as the humans who love, live with, and murder them. The film explores themes of segregation, redlining, poverty, and resource allocation in American communities, starting with a rat infestation in Baltimore. Theo Anthony's film takes the concept of poisonous racism to its logical conclusion. The young filmmaker, a Baltimore local, began work on his film with a humorously unfortunate accident, a late-night encounter with a rat locked in a garbage can that he captured with his phone, and went on to research the city's rat infestation. Anthony chronicles the rise of the city's segregated districts, as well as the unsanitary circumstances in which black citizens were compelled to live. Anthony used the rat to delve into Baltimore's dark and complicated history. Rat Film is a one-of-a-kind blend of history and poetry that examines how racial segregation, unethical lending practices known as redlining, and environmental racism impacted today's Baltimore. What begins as a study of human connections with rats, images of rat-infested individuals, rats as test subjects in laboratories, the production of rat poison, evolves into a more in-depth interrogation of Baltimore. Through the film, Anthony says that rats thrive where people have no dreams. Another instance of rat symbolism is found in the 1981 Malayalam film, which is translated as The Rat Trap. The film depicts the last remnants of feudalism as well as the matriarchal structure of society. It examines the tragic story of a family bound in the vortex of the declining past. The rat trap is a metaphor for understanding how women are treated in the medieval era. The Indian film exposes the breakdown of a rich family in realistic detail. The last male heir of the house is overly pampered by his sisters, and he is virtually paralyzed by his fear of the outside world. When he develops a fear of rats, the sisters trap them and drown them slowly in the river. By the end of the film, the rat's predicament is revealed to be analogous to his own. The sound we hear when we open the rat trap's door is similar to the sound heard when house doors are opened. This is just one of the instances where we gradually realize that the entire house is a rat trap. The structure of the film is poetically sophisticated. The Rat Trap, the title of the film in English, is both a physical reality and a metaphor for the film. The family's enormous decaying mansion is a rat trap in which one must either die or remain trapped, or go insane if they cannot escape. Each family member is imprisoned in their own rat trap, from which the younger sister tries to escape while the elder sister remains stuck. By the end of the film, our protagonist emerges from the slushy pond, his hair dripping wet and water pouring from his garments, implying that he is destined to remain in the rat trap forever. The next artwork that we are going to talk about is Albert Camus' The Plague. None of Camus' works depicts man's relationship with death as graphically as La Peste, often known as the plague. The premise of Camus' novel centers around a group of men who band together to fight an epidemic. The story opens with a strange sense of normalcy. Oran residents lead hectic, money-focused existence. Then there's the horror. Dead rats begin to surface throughout the city. Thousands of rats emerge from their dens, a drop of blood falls from their noses, and they die. Rats arrive as the disease's first warning, and they embody both the plague and the inhabitants of Oran. Rats indicate the type of evil in the world that people try to ignore, much like humans ignore rats, until they are practically dying in front of their eyes. The rats aren't only a metaphor for the pandemic, they are symbolic of what is to come, but they also represent the people. People will also perish in large numbers, filling the streets with their cries and the morgues and cemeteries with their remains. People lose all feeling of individuality, they are reduced to rats. As they survive in the end, it's symbolic of how people in Oran will as well. The reader's lack of interest in dead rats is akin to the universe's lack of interest in dead people. Placebo is another documentary that uses rat symbols to portray its themes. It is a gradual descent into surreal absurdity. It is intended to be a narrative on the redundancy of institutions. The documentary's inherent mysterious nature is precisely what sets it apart. It draws attention to the rising incidence of suicide cases, especially at prestigious institutions like Ames. It raises concerns about the authorities' indifference to students, their growing communication gap, and the isolation that follows. Placebo opens with pictures of lab rats clinging to life, evoking the plight of Indian students who are unsure of what to do. Used to denote the Indian educational system's rat race, it portrays the system as a placebo experiment being conducted on medical students aspiring to become doctors, similar to how rats are exploited in medical research. This particular scene shows 4 lab rats, symbolizing the social experiment filmmaker conducted on 4 students. These art pieces demonstrate how rats have always been utilized to enhance people's lives, whether in the medical or creative fields. Perhaps the horrors of the Holocaust, or the struggle of students confined to an unsympathetic education system, will spring to mind the next time you see a rat.